It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, Algerian diplomacy chief Ahmed Attaf has highlighted in Maputo the Algerian-Mozambique cooperation on Africa's key challenges, including representation in global institutions. The Palestinian presidency said that the Palestinian people will not accept any plans, whether displacement or an alternative homeland. And the African Union has denounced crimes and crimes against humanity in Sudan. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Thmani. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has congratulated Algerian writer Mohamed Milsaloul, known as Yasmina Khadra, after receiving a Global Literary Award in Spain. The president wrote on his social media account that he congratulates the loyal son of Algeria, Yasmina Khadra, on receiving a prestigious international award from the friendly nation of Spain. He stated that this achievement once again highlighted his remarkable talent in literature and extended his congratulations to Algerian culture, wishing him continued success. As you followed in our top stories, the Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, has been received in Maputo by the President of the Republic of Mozambique, Daniel Francisco Chapo, as part of his official visit to this brotherly country. Masoud Sharfi has the details.
During the meeting, the Minister of Foreign Affairs conveyed President Abdelmadjid Tebboune's greetings and congratulations to President Daniel Francisco Chapo on his election, reaffirming Algeria's commitment to strengthening historic ties and enhancing bilateral cooperation with Mozambique. He also expressed gratitude to Mozambique for its support in the African Union elections, acknowledged their successful collaboration in the Security Council in advancing African causes, and appreciated the positive progress in their bilateral relations across key priority areas.
And I have been sent by the President of my country to Mozambique for three main objectives. The first one was to thank very much Mozambique for its help during the last elections in the African Union, and also to express to the President Daniel Chapo how proud we were to work with Mozambique in the Security Council and thus achieving very high level of perfection in serving the African Union and the African causes. I told him also that we were highly appreciative of the way our bilateral relations are progressing in all the priority areas that we have identified together.
Mr. Attaf highlighted Algeria-Mozambique cooperation on Africa's key challenges, including representation in global institutions, while highlighting shared values of justice, freedom, and cooperation to strengthen the continent's position.
And finally, I had a third message, a message of consultation between Mozambique and Algeria on the main challenges facing Africa. And I mean by these challenges our membership of the G20, the building of the African Free Trade Organization, the ownership of the peace missions in Africa, the Security Council membership of Africa, and also our aspiration to a better representation of Africa within the financial and banking institutions. So as you say, the messages were very substantive, and they are promising for the future. They are opening bright prospects for the relations between Mozambique and Algeria, a relation that is mainly based on the certain values that we share, the values of justice, values of freedom, and the value of cooperation with a view of making Africa enjoy the rightful place it deserves within the international community.
During his official visit, Mr. Attaf has also held a working session in Maputo with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of the Republic of Mozambique, Ms. Maria Manuela dos Santos Lucas. The discussions centered on preparations for the 6th Joint Governmental Commission, emphasizing the need to maximize its outcomes to strengthen cooperation in defense, security, energy, agriculture, trade, information, and higher education. The two ministers also exchanged views on conflicts in Africa, stressing the importance of continued coordination in supporting just causes, with a particular focus on the Palestinian cause and the decolonization of Western Sahara.
Meanwhile, Mr. Attaf has paid a courtesy visit to the former president of Mozambique and honorary president of the International Association of Friends of the Algerian Revolution, Joaquim Alberto Chissano, at the end of his official visit to the Republic of Mozambique. The Secretary of State to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of African Affairs, Bakhta Selma Mansouri, has said in New York that comprehensive, fair and balanced reform of the multi-party system is now an imperative that cannot be put off. More in this report with Amina Budisha.
Speaking at Security Council briefing on improving global governance, Mrs. Mansouri has said that today's meeting takes place in an extremely complex international context, with the worrying escalation of geopolitical tensions and political security crises, including armed conflict, humanitarian disasters, economic challenges, the scourge of terrorism and cross-border crime, those threatening international peace and security and undermining the effectiveness of the multi-party system.
Algeria is deeply convinced that commitment to the multi-party system is the best way of tackling these common challenges. However, this system is going through a phase of unprecedented turbulence due to the accentuation of international polarization and the erosion of confidence in the UN institutions, for whom the reform of multi-party system is now an imperative necessity that cannot be postponed, so that this reform is comprehensive, fair and balanced.
She held the major role played by the International Court of Justice in guaranteeing justice and strengthening the rule of law, ensuring justice for the Palestinian people and raising the voice of truth, urging the court to carry on this path, particularly with regard to the persistent threat of forced exodus to which the population of Gaza is subject. She also affirmed the importance of improving the working methods of the Security Council to ensure greater transparency and equal opportunities for all its members.
Meanwhile, Ms. Mansouri has held a series of meetings with the heads of several delegations participating in meeting and UN representatives. The discussions focused on exchanging views on regional and international issues and ways of strengthening the coordination and cooperation in the international forums, notably in the African Union and the United Nations. The Chief of Mission, Embassy of Algeria in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Sabri Boukadoum, has said that the world is evolving rapidly, but as far as Algeria is concerned, it will continue engaging with the new U.S. administration. In an interview with the American website The Business Focus, Algeria's ambassador to Washington said that he has had multiple discussions with the new administration regarding both present and future cooperation. Asked if the current global geopolitical scenario and its impact on Algeria present more opportunities or challenges for the country, Mr. Boukadoum said that it is both a challenge and an opportunity, saying that the essence of diplomacy is to make them work together. He recalled that there have already been calls between the new U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ahmed Attaf. Mr. Boukadoum has stressed that the goal is to strengthen bilateral relations and contribute to global security. The Algerian ambassador to Washington said that Algeria has been deeply engaged with the UN and the Security Council for many years, adding that the country's approach is not to promote strictly Algerian interests, but rather to advocate for stability and peace globally. Boukadoum said that one of Algeria's main priorities has been working to end the violence in Gaza and secure a ceasefire. Here in Algiers, the Energy Ministry, in collaboration with the embassies of the Netherlands and Germany and the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, are holding a 2-day workshop on hydrogen valleys. The details with Mariam Barshi.
Over the 2-day workshop, stakeholders from the Algerian government, the private sector, international organizations such as the UN, as well as Dutch stakeholders in the German government, will discuss various requirements for the hydrogen valleys. Our colleague Jamil Salmani asked the associate expert at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, Sven Schuppener, who is attending the event, about the various requirements for the hydrogen valleys.
Various requirements for these hydrogen valleys, that is policy and regulation, that is skills development, that is financing and the mobilization of investment to finance these infrastructure developments, and the need for infrastructure in general. Infrastructure meaning, for example, gas pipelines, meaning roads, and meaning also industrial facilities that will be using the green hydrogen to produce low-carbon industrial products. Low-carbon industrial products can be fertilizer made from ammonia that can be produced as a downstream product of green hydrogen. It can be steel. It can be cement. It can essentially be all industrial products that rely heavily on high temperatures and high and carbon-intensive energy inputs.
Mr. Schuppener stressed that UNIDO, in collaboration with Algeria, other international partners, supports low-carbon industrial developments and diversification to modernize Algeria's industry sustainability.
As the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, we're proud to work together with the government of Algeria and other international partners such as the Embassy of the Netherlands as well as GIZ to promote low-carbon industrial development, to support the strategy of Algeria to push for an industrial diversification, for a broader industrial base, and also for a more climate-friendly industrial base that will help to modernize the Algerian industry. And we, as the international community and the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, see it as the core of our mandate to support our partner countries in their journey to diversify their industrial base and to combat climate change through more climate-friendly production.
That was the associate expert at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, Sven Schuppener.
Now, the official spokesman for the Palestinian presidency, Nabil Abu Rudaina, has warned that the Israeli occupation authorities will continue the comprehensive war on Palestinian people and land in the West Bank, especially in Jenin in its camp, as well as Tulkaram in its camps, committing more crimes of killing, displacement and destruction of property. More with Masoud Sharfi.
Mr. Abu Rudaina said that the occupation forces are waging a campaign of systematic destruction of homes and displacement of citizens, which has led to the killing of dozens of citizens and hundreds of wounded, amid international silence on the Israeli plans aimed at implementing the racist annexation and expansion plan in continuation of the crimes of genocide it committed in the Gaza Strip, which led to the killing, injury, and loss of more than 200,000 citizens. He called on the U.S. administration to intervene to stop the ongoing Israeli aggression against Palestinian people and land, and not to encourage it to continue its aggression, which will lead to an explosion of the situation in an uncontrollable manner, and everyone will pay the price. The official spokesman for the presidency stressed that the Palestinian people will not accept any plans, whether displacement or an alternative homeland. He added that threatening Palestinian people would not benefit anyone, but would lead to widespread destruction in Palestine or in the region. He stressed that expanding colonialism directly leads to the consecration of the Israeli apartheid system and falls within the framework of imposing unilateral and illegal measures to undermine any opportunity to achieve peace in accordance with international legitimacy resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. This is the English service. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has sounded the alarm about the escalating human rights violations in Sudan, warning that impunity is fueling violations as the fighting spreads. The details with Said Bougazi.
In a new report, UN investigators have reported multiple attacks on civilians, health facilities, markets and schools, as well as ethnically motivated summary executions. Continued and deliberate attacks on civilians and civilian property, as well as summary executions with ethnic motives, sexual violence and other violations and abuses underlined the total failure of both parties to respect the rules and principles of international humanitarian law and human rights law, said the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk. According to the report, more than 22 months of brutal fighting between government forces and the Rapid Support Forces RSF have left more than 30 million people across Sudan in need of assistance and protection. The fighting triggered the world's worst displacement crisis, with more than 12 million people displaced from their homes, with 3.3 million fleeing across the border. Food security and healthcare are also in free fall, with less than a quarter of Sudan's health facilities functioning in the areas worst affected by the fighting. Nearly 25 million people are suffering from acute levels of hunger. Urgent measures must be taken by the parties to put an end to this situation, hold those responsible to account, and grant compensation to survivors, recommended Volker Turk.
Now, the African Union has denounced crimes against humanity in Sudan, ravaged by a conflict that has left tens of thousands dead and 12 million people displaced since April 2023. The AU's Peace and Security Council, based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, held a meeting last Friday on the war in Darfur. The AU expressed concern about the continued escalation of the conflict between the rapid paramilitary support forces and the army. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has stressed that the UN's vital role and called for reforms in representation, support for development countries, adherence to principles, and peace operations. Mariam Barshi.
Speaking at the Security Council briefing, the United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has stressed that global security is needed more than ever.
Global solidarity and solutions are needed more than ever. The climate crisis is raging, inequalities are growing, and poverty is on the rise. As this Council knows well, peace is getting pushed further out of reach, from the occupied Palestinian territory to Ukraine, to Sudan, to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and beyond. Terrorism and violent extremism remain persistent scourges, and we see a dark spirit of impunity spreading. The prospect of nuclear war remains, outrageously, a clear and present danger. And the limitless promise of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence is matched by limitless peril to undermine and even replace human thought, human identity, and human control. These global challenges cry out for multilateral solutions. The Pact for the Future, you adopted in September, is aimed at strengthening global governance for the 21st century and rebuilding trust. Trust in multilateralism, trust in the United Nations, trust in this Council. At its heart, the Pact for the Future is a pact for peace, peace in all the dimensions. It puts forward concrete solutions to strengthen the machinery of peace, drawing from proposals to the new agenda for peace that prioritize prevention, mediation, and peace building.
He added that the Pact for the Future, adopted in September, was aimed at strengthening global governance for the 21st century and rebuilding trust in multilateralism, trust in the United Nations, and in the Security Council.
The Pact for the Future, you adopted in September, is aimed at strengthening global governance for the 21st century and rebuilding trust. Trust in multilateralism, trust in the United Nations, trust in this Council. At its heart, the Pact for the Future is a pact for peace, peace in all the dimensions. It puts forward concrete solutions to strengthen the machinery of peace, drawing from proposals to the new agenda for peace that prioritize prevention, mediation, and peace building.
The Secretary-General urged all member states to continue strengthening and updating global problem-solving mechanisms.
Let's recall this piece of information. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has congratulated Algerian writer Mohamed Moulshoul, known as Yasmina Khadra, after receiving a Global Literary Award in Spain. On this occasion, we invite you to listen to the next program on Yasmina Khadra's novel, a famous one, What the Day Owes the Night.
A story in an artwork. A story in an a weekly program that tells